and welcome to the Leong Form with me, Stanley, and my brother, Hossan. Our guest today has been a soldier, a strategist, and a healthcare leader, and now he is a Minister of State. Now, perhaps a lesser known fact about him is that he is a metalhead. You heard that right? A metalhead who became a brigadier general. From taking cover from rocket attacks in the trenches of Afghanistan to now taking questions in Parliament. The gentleman across from us appears to have lived, Hossan, several times in one, don't you think?
Several lifetimes, actually. We're talking about Minister of State Dinesh Vasu Dash, Minister of State for Culture, Community and Youth, and for Manpower. He's also Mayor of the Southeast District, Vice Chair of the East Coast Town Council, and MP for East Coast GRC. Busy, this fella?
Very.
But beyond the titles, Dinesh's story is a story of service, resilience, and reinvention.
That's right. And on the Leong Form today, we're going to trace his journey, if you like, through some of Singapore's defining moments, from overseeing security at the Trump-Kim summit to carrying the weight of the nation literally as lead coffin bearer at Mr. Lee Kuan Yew's state funeral. And later on, leading the Agency for Integrated Care, or AIC, through the crucible of COVID-19.
And we'll talk about how these experiences, including his innate desire to always be of help to others, and how they've shaped his sense of duty and humanity, from commanding troops to caring for seniors, and now shaping policy that touches everyday lives.
Dinesh, great to have you with us on the Leong Form.
Thank you for having me.
Now, we're going to be just warming up a little bit, so we're going to be playing a quick fire round of questions called Dash to the Point, if you borrow your name a little bit. And Hossan's got some very fun questions for you.
Yeah, we're going to just go, I guess, know a little bit of you, about you better. So it's very quick, okay? So it's like A or B, apple, orange kind of answers, and then perhaps maybe expound a little bit on it, okay? Sure. First one, mosh pit or military parade ground, which one feels more like home?
Oh God.
Wow, that's
Stuck on the first question.
you got to think about that.
Yeah, I guess more familiar with military parade ground for
Okay.
now. Yeah.
All right.
Quite boring, but yes.
Probably
Fair
more
enough,
time
fair
spent in it
Yes,
as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, all right. So you're stuck on a desert island with only one album for eternity. Which one would you choose?
Black, the Black album.
What surprising thing in your Spotify playlist that your colleagues would rather be shocked at?
Oh, I tend to listen to Rage Against the Machine.
Oh.
Yeah, so that is a bit not the usual conventional type of music.
Yes, Rage Against the Machine. Okay.
I'm not familiar with that, but I think I'll just
So
do
it's
some.
about revolution.
Yeah, it's about
and
revolution,
all the rest of
yeah.
it. But again, it's about it's not really the context of Singapore, but from where they've started, what they go about doing, the kind of lyrics that they have. Quite interesting to just put yourselves in that picture.
Yeah. Now let's put ourselves into Afghanistan and also the COVID-19 crisis. Afghanistan deployment or COVID-19 crisis management, which one aged you faster?
Oh dear.
To be honest, it was COVID.
Yeah.
That aged me a lot more. And partly was because of the complexity and duration of the whole operation. And the span of what I did, from testing to call center operations to vaccination to everything else.
Okay.
Afghanistan was a bit more scoped, but the only difference was you could have been killed. So,
Yes.
kind of extreme ends, but yes.
All right, we're going to wrap up with this final one, okay? You spoke about Metallica earlier.
Yes.
If Metallica wrote a song about your life, what song would it be?
I was about to say Dazed and Confused, but the title has been taken. I would say Struggle.
Struggle, the song Struggle by Metallica.
Yeah, the name would have probably been Struggle. And again, it's reflecting different points of life, choices that had to be made, and often the struggle between the choices.
Well, there you go. You've heard it first here on Dash to the Point. And here is where we talk about your turning points and the struggles, perhaps even coming to where you are today. So thank you for playing with us with that game. And we'll dive straight into our little chat then.
We shall. Dinesh, I mean, let's start with something that doesn't quite fit the profile, if you like. A metalhead, becoming a BG. When did you first put on that uniform and think, wait, is this really me?
Well, strangely, there was a link to metal because the first day that Metallica played in Singapore, many, many years ago was the day of my enlistment.
Oh, wow.
I won't tell you which year because it'll reveal my age. But yeah, so it started then. And I was wondering who plays a concert on I think it was a Monday.
Right.
And I was like, should I like call in sick one day and turn up the next day?
On enlistment day. You can't do that.
Good start, Dinesh.
So obviously that was where the struggle started.
Struggle.
And from there, it kind of, so I went in, I was thinking, why of all times that when they choose to play in Singapore, they chose the day of my enlistment. But 20 years later, they came back and then I was able to see them. So that was roughly how it was. But I think about 20 years after that.
Okay, and you did enlist, right?
I did enlist, yes. So otherwise I'll be, seeing the
won't be
eternal...
here.
Yes.
Different context of interviewing Dinesh. Okay, so you had this unique overseas experience you were telling us about earlier between 2006 and 2007. You spent a year at the Defence Services Staff College in Wellington, not New Zealand,
yes.
but in Tamil Nadu, India. Not quite your typical military college. I didn't think that Singapore would send you to, but what was the experience like and what good came out of that?
Okay, so it was a very interesting experience for me, partly because it was the point at which India was starting its, the climb that it had economically. It was really the early days. I was able to see how it was, embed myself in it, almost a reverse migration because many people are coming to the east and setting up themselves in Singapore, whereas I spent a year in India. So that was very, very interesting for me. It also gave me a perspective of what it means to be in a big country. We are in a small country. So our perspectives of life will always be very different. We will never understand what it's like to be in a big country until you have stayed and experienced life in a huge country like
be part of
India.
the millions and billions of people.
Exactly. And then you understand the psyche, you understand why they are the way they are, everything of that sort. Because it's just the sheer quantity as well as quality of talent. So they have, as I say, if you have a 1 in a million in Singapore, you can probably count with one hand. But over there, it'll be in the thousands.
Wow. Right. Wow.
So therein lies the difference. So sometimes it's useful to compare between, the talent pool that we have and the talent pool that larger countries have. And that is really what we face in international relations as well as, what Singapore has to do in the international stage.
That's
So
quite
we're no
interesting,
longer in, a small little pot, but we are really swimming in the Olympics. So that's how, that was the first realization and the experience that I had over there.
Was that in any way worrying for you, thinking that, oh no, I'm going to come back to Singapore, that small little red dot?
Actually, it got me thinking as to what we would have to do to compete against larger countries that are much bigger than us in terms of numbers and talent.
Scale, resources.
Exactly. There was once where there was a person who said that, if a certain country, which is not far from us, if all of them took a leak, Singapore would drown.
Okay.
To which I think there's some logic to that, but the answer will always be, well, you got to muster your hundreds of millions of people and they all have to pee at the same time.
That's true.
And therein lies the role that Singapore plays because we tend to be very much more well organized, united. I think this is very important because and that allows us to be able to punch above our weight. Otherwise, even in a large country with small pockets that work, they could still be far bigger than a small country that's trying to do its best. Yeah. So we would always have to get the internals correct and always to be able to punch above our weight.
And all of us need to learn how to swim.
I think NS
it's part of the curriculum.
On that note, though, I kind of understand where you're coming from, having gone to that college, because when I was younger, I always wanted to try Broadway,
yes,
West End.
Yes.
Then everyone here says, "Oh, you can do it. You can try. You got talent." But when you're there, you realize the sheer number of people with talent far more immense than yours.
Yes.
And then you go like, "Kila no need lah." Well, I mean, that was, so it's quite an interesting take on that because it got me thinking about what if I had tried,
I think we have good people, we have great talent, we've got great institutions. The challenge will always be initially that exact same reaction. Wow, there's so many of them and they're far better than what we are. But when you start the process and when you dig deep, and I think that resilience is with every one of us in Singapore. It's innate. It doesn't come out immediately. But when you look at it and when you go through the process, you'll realize that we are as good, if not, dare I say, better pound for pound. Yeah. So now the question will be, how do we then expand that to as many people as we can to give the confidence that, it doesn't matter if you're small, but we have the quality person for person to be able to compete with people who are much bigger than we are.
Right. Very optimistic outlook.
Yeah.
Now, still looking back at your time while you were still in uniform in the military, you also served as the lead coffin bearer for Mr. Lee Kuan Yew's funeral. Tell us what was going through your mind during that time, because I'm sure that the sheer weight, of bearing that literally and symbolically, you must have felt quite a lot on your shoulders.
Yes, it was very moving for me personally. I've seen Mr. Lee, but always at a distance. Either in the TV. I think once or twice when he has given a speech, I've been in the same room as him. Clearly a giant in his time, and I think historically for Singapore as well. So to be able to do the final send-off was particularly meaningful. We were the ones who kind of walked in the rain. Again, a very symbolic moment, which we never anticipated at all. Almost as if there was a cloud above the Parliament House at that point in time. And it was a fitting farewell for a person who was a giant for his time.
Wow, it was an honor for sure,
yes.
right?
I must say, just to look at, again, we were not at the University Cultural Centre. We were the backup and we left after that. But just to look at the number of leaders from around the world who came down, I think that really goes to show where Singapore fits in the wider, global stage. And the position that Mr. Lee had was something that I think was truly remarkable for a country that started very differently.
Right, for sure.
In almost a backwater swampland to where we are today.
Where we are today, right?
Sometimes we don't, again, we move on and it's in the conscious somewhere, but it's useful to kind of recollect where we were and where we are now. And the
in
journey
short
that
space
we
of
took.
time.
Yes, in a short space of time. It's just one generation and we're already here. And most of us have lived through that too.
Yes.
I remember going to school and, there were floods.
Yes.
And
Bukit Timah Road. Yay, no school today, yay.
I think our arts exam got cancelled.
Yes,
wasn't it?
exactly. And to see from where we are to then use a flood-prone country, pretty much low-lying. Today now exacerbated with climate change and all of that. But to then use that as a virtue, turning a threat into an opportunity where we are harvesting rainwater and that becomes a source of nourishment for the country. It's truly remarkable, the way in which we've just turned it in just one generation.
Absolutely. Well, we spoke about leaders earlier. So let's talk about a couple of leaders that were quite unlikely to be here at the same time, but they did. The Trump-Kim summit in 2018, caused a real big thing around the world and especially in Singapore. Surreal. Two unpredictable leaders coming together in Singapore, shaking hands with everyone watching. Now, you were part of that. How did you deal with the enormity of this event and the nagging question, what if something went wrong?
So I must just add that this was a whole of government
of course.
effort.
Not yours,
So
not you.
It wasn't me alone. I was just one of the many. The entire military was pretty much involved, from the Navy to the Air Force to the Army. We had many platforms that were either flying or sailing around Sentosa and mainland. I was sitting next to the Commissioner of Police throughout this entire operation. A few points which not many people may know. We had a very short planning window.
Right.
I think it was less than 2 weeks to get the whole thing through. So again, it goes to show that there were many people who put in a lot of effort to just make sure everything went according to clockwork. There were many requests that the leaders had, especially one of them, I won't say who, but and we had to facilitate those requests. And often it involved interactions with certain parts of, because they were keen to observe how Singapore does and how we are organized, and we had to facilitate those visits. And if that happens at a last minute kind of a sequence, as it usually does, then it means that we have to just kick into gear the entire security arrangements, etc.
It sets off like a domino effect, right? Some request happens and change.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And quite interesting because we had a request to take a look at our ports. So there was a bit of a drive, but just to see how the organization was and so on. So there was interest to understand the transport network as well. And so forth. So that was very interesting. I remember when Chairman Kim landed, there was a convoy that was bringing him to the hotel. And there was one guy standing from the car that's in front of his with something that looked like a weapon facing his car. But of course, it was his entourage. And I realized that it was a cameraman who was videotaping the entire journey so that it could be transmitted back to
So it's almost
North
like
Korea.
tele lenses, big
Looked
one,
like a rocket
bazooka.
launcher.
How funny.
Yeah, so that's how it was. And a very interesting sequence because the meeting happened in Sentosa Island. So we had to make sure that although it's Singapore and we are quite comfortable with the security arrangements and so on, but we had to just make sure that every single thing was in place, including examining every single pillar on the bridge that connects Singapore to Sentosa. It's about 370 bridges.
I mean, for sure.
Pillars, and we had to check every single one of them.
Cool.
To check everything. And that credit goes to the naval divers. So they went and checked everything. The other part that I think very interesting that people may not know was often when you have these bilateral events, you have the security teams of the native countries coming down as well. And in the case of US and North Korea, there was a lot of mistrust at that point in time. So we were in a kind of a delicate situation. And it just so happened that firstly, some of the equipment that we used were US equipment. So that allowed us to, get, of course, the US knows us and therefore, they're quite comfortable with us using such equipment, tactics, badges even, because they see the badges, they know, oh, these were from America. And some of the folks that I had were trained in America, either for bomb disposal or choppers and all the rest of it. But what was lesser known was that some of my soldiers, particularly those in the bomb disposal unit, somehow or other, maybe because of their family nexus, were able to speak Korean. So they were able to then communicate with the North Koreans, and the North Koreans were very comfortable with us as well. Now, I cite this because it's important for us to be that interlocutor in a far more complex world. And these are the skill sets that we would need, not just the hardware, but really the software, to be able to then connect people together and to be able to be a useful member of the international community so that we are able to then, balance between the rivalries that we are seeing today.
Oh my gosh, I love that story.
Yeah. I mean, it's more than just language, right?
No, yes, it's
I
way
mean,
more
I'm
than
also
language.
just thinking back of your time when you were spending it in India as well during your school days.
Yes.
Oh, not school days, but when you were in the military and they sent you over. And that must also, whether or not it's fully proven itself to be really useful and helpful for what you're doing now,
Oh, yes.
is another question. But I'm sure it's just going to be putting you in very good stead for future relations and events
Indeed.
and collaborations with India.
So even for the time in India, we would travel, again, as part of the course, to different parts of India, where most people may not have even gone. For example, the front line between the Indo-Pak border and so forth. At that point in time, it was rather prickly, shall we say, because there were militant attacks going on.
very
and so
delicate,
on.
the area.
It's very, very delicate. There were a lot of, it could very well escalate to a full-blown conflict, as is the case often as well. So, but to be able to then understand the country, there are certain parts, because it's so pristine, there's not many tourists around and so on. It's really very beautiful, especially the areas like Kashmir, Ladakh. Very, very beautiful places. We flew over what's called the Siachen Glacier, which is within the contested areas between.
They have a glacier.
Yeah, they do. And I was just thinking that if that was developed into a ski resort jointly, it would rival the best ski resorts in Europe.
Wow.
But because they have the place and it's very beautiful, it's pristine slopes. But unfortunately, we have to get past the geopolitical
We need an entrepreneur.
complications.
To
Start up.
to the diplomatic ties. Yeah, then we start ski resort.
All right. So those were really quite rich experiences that you had while you were a military man, from the summit, and then you had Afghanistan, and then you rose to Brigadier General. But then it came to a point where you decided that you would like, after 23 years, which is a long time, to close that military chapter and move on to something different. What was stirring within you during those times where you're considering, maybe I've just had enough of the military, time to move on? And we also understand that you were a whisker away from becoming a C-suite leader after the military.
So in the private sector.
Apparently in the private sector.
So I was. So what happened was, why leave the army? Right, I had a couple more years to reach my full retirement, but I thought I should leave earlier, and partly because I wanted to try something else. As I said, at that point, I was probably relatively senior enough for me to be considered for other senior level appointments outside, and relatively junior enough to be able to adapt to the change, right? Because it will be a change that needs to take place. But I was at a good point in the army, and I thought it's useful to then start something new. It's something that's innate in me that I'd like to always keep moving rather than to be a bit more static in one particular area. And hence, so I actually resigned first, and then came the opportunity to consider, strangely, a commodities trade finance firm, which was totally not related to the work that I do. So I had to go through Skills Future training. And this is true.
Yeah.
So I went to SMU and took some courses and so on. So while I do have an MBA previously, commodities trade finance is rather unique. And I had to kind of take up, like those 1-2 day courses just to get myself acquainted with the kind of work that they do. Eventually, I ended up going to MOH and not to... so that was another U-turn.
So interesting. So that turning point we want to delve into a little bit, because you went from uniform to healthcare, and then COVID right? Hit, right?
So it happened because of COVID. So what happened was I was about to start my work in the fintech / commodities trade finance firm. Eventually came the lockdown.
2020.
In 2020, April, I think, and I was asked to go to the permanent secretary's office in early June 2020, when the lockdown was lifted. So the day the lockdown was lifted, I went to Ministry of Health. I had a chat with the permanent secretaries there, and they suggested that I
head up.
Not go to the private sector, but to consider MOH, which was eventually what I did.
Yeah, but what won you over? I mean, given that you already had kind of paved the way towards joining the private sector, and then this happened.
Firstly, the lockdown, again, it seems like distant memory today, but it was something that, to me, looked like something of an apocalyptic book. And you go around and you realize that shops were closed, streets are empty, wildlife is thriving everywhere.
Many chickens were crossing the roads.
And you wonder if that is going to be the case with more frequent lockdowns in future, and how life is going to be. And so I had no idea. So when I spoke to them, I was dealing with a different part of the operations in the Ministry of Defense when I was still there. And to me, I've passed this chapter, I'm moving on to the next. But when I spoke to the permanent secretaries and I realized the extent of the work that needed to be done, I couldn't help but to then say, well, I think I should spend a bit of time here. I initially thought it was going to be a year maximum, and then move on to what I wanted to do. So it became 1 to 2 to 3 years. So I spent 3 years as a kind of dealing with all the COVID operations and so on. And then I went over to the Agency for Integrated Care. So that was the journey.
The journey. Wow. Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
So sidetrack definitely, and we can't really plan our route, so thoroughly and know that it's going to happen.
Yes.
Right, for sure.
So I think if you asked me at any point of my life, where would I be in the next 5 years, I wouldn't have been able to predict.
No.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of living, right? That's the beauty of life in Singapore. That's really the beauty of the world that we live in, where there will be many opportunities that you won't be able to say, or you won't be able to predict as a 18-year-old or 25-year-old or anything of that sort. But as you engage and as you move along in life, new opportunities will turn up. It could be for the better, for the worse. Then you just move on with that. And if you look at Singapore as a whole, because the entire tide in Singapore has been lifting over the years, you realize that your choices would be pretty much good, regardless of whichever pathway you choose. So those have been some, reflections that I've had throughout this journey. Although while you're going through it, quite scary lah. It's like, I wonder how come you're going here and then over to there. They showed me my office at the commodities trade finance firm. I was overlooking the floating platform, Then I cried buckets because I used to be there, and now I can see the parade if I was there from the I won't say which floor, but quite high up, and you could observe the entire thing, and it's a totally different experience, which I was quite keen to do at that point in time.
Great.
Yeah.
Never too late. You never know when the next turn might happen.
Yes.
All right. Let's also talk about how you went into healthcare. COVID hit. You were chief executive at AIC, senior director MOH. It must have cost you also a lot of sleep, given that you initially thought you would just be with them for 1 year, but of course COVID-19 the virus had other ideas. How much sleep did it deprive you of during those years?
Yeah, so actually it did affect me quite a bit because, so it starts from Afghanistan. So whenever you come back, you have a bit of readjustment that needs to take place.
Would I say PTSD? No.
Not D. It's not a disorder, but it was called post-traumatic stress.
Sure, yeah.
I think in my case, it has crossed the... No, I'm just kidding. But, so that kind of reenacts itself whenever you're in another kind of a stressful type of a situation. It will happen from time to time, and you've got to figure ways to kind of cope and think of ways to control, to balance out yourself.
Right.
But one manifestation which I still kind of struggle with somewhat, we were joking as well, that it does affect sleep, which I think it's very important because sleep does have an effect on overall health and well-being, particularly for heart health. So I had to get past that point where I would wake up after a certain period of time and checking you're programmed to either check your email and so on and so forth in between reports that you have to send out and stuff like that. So these were areas that I had to kind of cope post COVID as well.
And I'm sure during that whole period of 3 years, there were you'd have to, as you say, cope. But how did you deal with it though? Because like I'm trying to, if I'm stressed, I got work, a million projects going on in my head, trying to earn a living as a freelancer. Don't know where paychecks coming from. I wake up. Sometimes I'm anxious because you go like, oh no, what's happening? Did I plan it? And I'm trying to ask ChatGPT So I said, how do I do it? So he came up with this answer says, when you wake up, don't check your phone to see what time you get up. Breathe, take a sip of water and just lie back again and sink back into sleep. And it's kind of working so far.
I see.
So I thought, so how did you deal with it though during that stressful times of COVID and you had to deal with so many things and a lot of it was negative?
Yeah. So it does take a while to kind of cope. Well, family is very helpful. So I've got a very supportive wife and kids were there. So I send my kids to school every day. I still do that today. And I think it's important to keep the connection because sometimes you come back late, they may be sleeping and stuff like that. So it's about that family links that keeps you going, which is unique. Obviously, when I was overseas, they weren't with me in some of my adventures, shall we say. So for this time, when they are there, it adds a certain level of motivation. Music is very helpful, so I tend to listen to a lot of music. And as I've highlighted certain albums, the strange ones that I listen to, that helps me to kind of cope and be connected somewhat because you live your life through the lyrics of the songs that you hear. So that makes and of course the genre of music sometimes helps as well. And often some light exercise would be helpful. So I would go for short runs and so on. So those would allow me to clear your mind and focus back on what needs to be done. Yeah. So that's been helpful. I don't think we can, kind of depending on individuals and the context that we're in, we won't be able to get away from stress. But there are different ways at which we can mitigate and cope. So I think that's the best we should be doing, if you ask me.
Well, good advice. You've heard it here on Health Talks. No.
Yeah, and music is where you turn to. Music is also, we understand that you sing, Dinesh. We don't worry, we're not going to ask you to sing.
Eyes open very big.
But we
Because
understand
the
that.
camera will crack,
But singing is something that you do. Is this in the bathroom or outside of the
so it's a
bathroom?
bit of kind of in the car, in the bathroom type of a thing. So never in a public kind of a space until they asked me, during the elections, and so I did sing a couple of lines, and everybody was, wow. To be fair, it was during my AIC tour because I had a very good Copcoms team. They had a kind of an intro video of mine, and then they said, oh, you listen to music, well, you can sing or not. Then I said, if I sing, you all will vomit. And they said, no, try. Then I just sang, and that kind of like connected quite a bit. So it wasn't something that you'd immediately associate with me, I suppose.
But that's the thing. Music always connects. There was
Yeah,
once
it
I
does.
was hosting a charity gala, and Min Indrani was there, and she was so sporting. She said, "I sing this song, you all raise more money, okay?" So we auctioned off her song.
Oh, really?
Was this the one where she sang in Cantonese?
Yeah, she sang the Shanghai Tang song in Cantonese. Long Ban. Wow, we were all blown away, and then we raised a lot of money, and so I'm like, there you go. There's scope for you
Alright,
there.
so
raise money.
Okay. If it's for raising money, I don't mind.
Why not?
Yeah.
You heard it first. The invitation goes out from the Leong Form from Dinesh. All right, but let's talk about more crossroads. You have encountered so many crossroads, but let's also look at your time previously as a board member of the Hindu Advisory Board. You're also in the Exco at Cinder. So tell us, Dinesh, how you see this role as being a leader within the Indian community and perhaps where the needs may be greatest.
I guess I'm one of the leaders out there for the community. It's a very diverse community. When I mentioned the time that I had in India, it's very reflective because every state in India really is a mini country of its own, with its own language, culture, norms, and so forth. And when all of that is kind of brought in a mini form in Singapore, that's really what you get in the Indian community. Although the dominant language and race is the Tamils, but there are many, many other subgroups within. And again, that adds to the strength that the community has. Over the years, I think it has achieved tremendous levels of achievement. For its size. It's really punched above its weight. I think we have got about 40% of the Indian population that's minimally has qualification as a degree holders. And so I think they have evolved very well over the years. There are areas which I think the Indian community would have to focus a bit more on, particularly the vulnerable within the community, recidivism, and those who are going to our prisons and so forth. I think these are some areas that we could do a bit better at. And there's a committee that's co-chaired by me and SMS Murali, and we hope to address some of these issues moving forward. So we are in a good place, but we have to look out for things for the future and what else that needs to be done for the community.
That's
very
amazing.
unique because it has its own strengths, at the same time points of diversity, mini Singapore in that sense. So we've got to find ways to connect everybody together, coordinate our efforts and so on.
Speaking of identity then, being mini Singapore and all that, when you travel, do people go, oh, you're Indian, therefore you are from India? Do you get that? Or because I get the,
Yes.
hey, you from China? And I get I get affronted a little bit. I'm like, no, I'm from Singapore.
Yeah.
You know?
So the best example would be when I was in India and they said that, you should wear your national attire. And so I was like, okay, I can't be wearing my Indian outfit in India, and it look really weird. So what I did was I got a little suit tailored. It used sari material. It had a bit of Islamic type of kind of designs, a crescent moon and stuff like that. And I designed it to a kind of a Chinese Mandarin collar. So it looks...
nice.
So that was what I had to do, a kind of a cross between the various cultures, but it had a story on its own and it's distinct and unique. So I think that those are the spaces that we'd have to kind of work towards to figure out what then best. It need not be a kind of a hodgepodge of the communities.
Like a Miss
but it's-
Universe costume. The Merlion.
But it's about trying to blend as much as we can to create something that's distinctive and uniquely Singaporean. So I think that's what we need to. But at the same time, recognizing that each culture, each race has uniqueness and richness that we want to preserve too, right?
Yeah,
So it's about
our
understanding
traditions,
one
our
another.
customs.
Exactly.
Which are slowly eroding, I think, because as we, become more global, so to speak. So how do we, I guess how is a very big question to find this identity of I'm Singaporean, yet I'm still holding on to my, do you know what I mean? Otherwise those fault lines can happen very quickly as well.
Yes.
Race can cause a lot of
Yes.
problems. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I think it's the way we have evolved. And if you go back to, let's say, 100 years, that's when the clan organizations would be very strong. They have they pick the people, the immigrants who are coming in from the port. They would be housed, you'd be fed, you'd be given jobs and so on. Then once you're okay, they move on to the next person and so forth. Today, the situation has changed somewhat because a lot of these efforts are really taken by the individuals or by different agencies within government. So we then have to evolve towards what's the current norm and what will be the future. And in a rapidly changing island where you have different, the various religions and races rather are evolving in its own way. And, we have our own pressures within. And that will change year on year. And even if you look at the future, there will be different perspectives and so on. And how do we then anchor back to some of the good old days and what are the other parts that we would say, well, we would want things to evolve as they come. And how do we then have conversations? And so it's really about evolution of how the country has evolved over the years. And how do we, amidst rapid changes, stay true to roots? And how do we then evolve our roots to make it interesting to the young? It's very interesting that I noted that some of our young are now going back to dialects.
Yes.
And trying to understand what the dialects have been and so on. So there's an immediate natural nexus between young people and older seniors because they would have been using dialects and they had a way of communicating dialects. I was just watching a documentary where in the past, there were people who would do storytelling in dialects. And if you are a Hokkien speaker, you'd go to a Telok Ayer where they have the storyteller will be from Telok Ayer. Where Teochew, it's a different part of all within the city area, but different spots, and people gather and listen. So it's evolved from that towards one where you're looking at a mobile phone and you probably get the fix from the mobile phone, but once again, getting connected back to roots. So that's happening in a very different way. And I think we should focus on what are the core areas that are important to the country and what are the areas that I think people can evolve their way to finding their own, kind of equilibrium from that perspective.
I think we should just make Singlish a subject in school.
I think it's good for just bringing
It's true.
different cultures
In New
together.
York,
of course, we need to know how to code switch.
we need
when
to,
we go overseas.
But in New York, we're doing Singapore Day, right? In the train, in the subway, and then you hear this, hey, I tell you after some, we go back to Philadelphia. And I'm like, Singaporean. And like, hey, you Singaporean. Then immediately we connect in the subway in New York in the middle of nowhere. So I think our identity is, I think a little bit of that. And it's so much, so rich, this tapestry that we've created.
It is. I actually did say hello to somebody else who was on a river cruise in Hoi An. They got those lanterns and those small little boats. And then I heard Singaporean accent on the other boat. And
run away, right?
Fellow Singaporean. So he was, I think, was either on a honeymoon or something, and he was taken aback. Yeah, but it was nice to just connect, on that level. That your own people in that sense. But let's continue to focus it back on Dinesh. We've touched military. We've touched about your time in healthcare. You continue to be involved in the community as well. And of course, most recently since May, adding politics to that list. So has politics, being in government, been a childhood ambition? I knew you almost went into private sector, but of course, looks like you kind of made a detour here. So was politics, did it ever figure when you were younger?
Not exactly. It wouldn't be seen as a career track usually. So it's always seen as a kind of an extension of volunteer work of sorts, right? Because you're serving the community, etc. And again, you would not say that, I'm going to go in as a political office holder. you wouldn't know, right? So the decision points at that point would have been whether do you stand for elections in order to serve the community, or do you continue in your own track? So in that sense, not often it was in the conscience to say, well, maybe I should choose this particular pathway. But because it will be a giant step, and you need to be sure that you're able to do so and so on. And it's not usually in the conscience, right? I was doing quite a lot of volunteer work in my even when I was in the army, and even during COVID, strangely, right? Although we didn't have much face-to-face interactions, but there was quite a bit of volunteer work that I did. And so when it came closer to, shall we say April 2025, and when I was asked, I thought it was something that I could make a positive contribution to.
Okay.
So I thought then maybe I should consider a step in this particular direction to see if I can be of service to a larger community in beyond just small little segments of where my voluntary work had been. Can I do something a bit more broader?
So you put up your hand and you said yes, and then they gave you two ministries, MCCY and MOM. And so now that you have that, okay, you also very, very you care for a lot of causes, right? Like elder care, volunteerism.
Yes.
Now that you're straddling two ministries, your plate's so full, how do you do that? How can you still find time and all that?
So now I have to find a way for what I used to do to be embedded in my day-to-day engagements with the community. So for example, I've always been a believer in supporting caregivers. I did that in Agency for Integrated Care. And this time around, when the opportunity turned up, I spoke to my friends at SG Enable, and we created an enabling services hub in one of the void decks that we reconfigured for the purpose of creating. Now, what the enabling services hub does is that it brings in people with intellectual or physical disabilities and provides facilities and training for them. For example, over the weekend on Sunday, I did a walk with the community, and I spoke to one of my residents whose daughter used to be traveling all the way to Tampines to have her, to do some of the activities within the center. But this time around, with the hub being opened in Bedok itself, she just needs to cross the road and get across. So that made a tremendous difference to this particular individual, because she's quite well functioning, so she's working as well. But at the same time, if she needs to do any activities, she goes to the Enabling Services Hub, which basically means that travel time is reduced, and hence she can actually go to the hub, get her, do some activities and so on, keep herself occupied, and thereafter go for a shift at the work, which is not too far from her home as well. So that, and the mum was telling me that she has improved tremendously over the last couple of months. So it's things like these little success stories that really make it all worthwhile, that you're helping someone. I wouldn't have imagined when I started the Enabling Services Hub that there'll be people who would be, so they really, they came to me and they told me that I didn't.
So this hub is it going to be spread across the island and
so
stuff?
we are trying to see if we can open one more, but it's still early days. So I wanted to just make sure. This is only open for about 2 months now.
So it's just started.
So we've started. We're going to see how that goes. It's growing quite well. I've got very, very committed staff that's in there. So these are, the numbers that they reach are relatively small, right? In the tens. They have about 30 to 40 clients. Will that grow further? I think it will. Can we expand it more? I think we should. So those are some discussions that are going on. And while the numbers may be small, to the persons who are going to these places, it makes a tremendous difference to life. It's life-changing. So we should be doing more of that at the community level, for which I can be of some help. So that's where it is. The same for seniors as well. We've done quite a bit with seniors. In fact, this walk that I'm talking about was with about 600 seniors, and we do it every month. So that was a good way to get things that we were talking about at the policy and at the stat boards and so on. But you can make it happen on the ground, and I think that really makes a difference to the residents, and that's very exciting and really gives a lot of energy to do that.
That's great.
Yeah, indeed. Benefiting not just the people, but we also want more people to be involved
That's right.
As volunteers, for instance, because we understand you have been personally, very involved in community efforts, including at Sri Narayana Mission Nursing Home. I think you've also been very involved there, years of volunteering. So tell us, especially as we talk about, and hear a lot of the We First society, that sort of concept. How can we, our viewers, our listeners, contribute towards this effort to strengthen support for especially vulnerable groups, be they our fellow neighbors in our neighborhood or even groups like the lower wage workers as well.
Yeah. So the notion of we first, quite honestly, is something that is innate among all of us. We've always been Singapore first. We've always been thinking about it from that perspective. And I think what we first aims to do is to deepen that discussion and to make it real for residents. To say that, well, there are many, many archetypes and every one of us are individuals. And it's not about making sure that the individual benefits from this entire process, but really to make sure that we derive more joy in creating a community among ourselves, communities of communities, being able to connect with one another. And in so doing, we'll be able to create a we first society. So it's about network of networks, making sure that we come together as a whole, kind of related to the earlier story about larger countries. And, we need to bond. And in order to bond, we would have to see beyond the usual stereotypes that we are used to seeing as I only deal with certain people, my people of similar race. So there must be an effort to really mingle with as many people as we can, open our hearts to other communities, open our hearts to our migrant workers, open our hearts to newcomers to Singapore. That makes us stronger as a whole. Otherwise, we will be picked apart by forces that you can see happening in many, many countries around the world. So we first is a way to combat the forces that pulls us apart, to say, let's redouble our efforts to bring ourselves closer. Now, if you take what's happening in places like Europe and even the United States, you realize that some parts of society is indeed fraying. I always say that multiculturalism across the world is in retreat. And if there's one place that multiculturalism really works, it's here in Singapore. And we would have to guard against the international norms that we see in different countries, which are pulling them apart. Either because they live in enclaves, there's
ghettos
ghettos. There are people who would say that religions are different. My religion is different from your religion. Your religion professes this, mine professes that. Racially, you are different, and so on. So we have adopted a very different philosophy in Singapore, and I think that's worth reiterating. At the national level, we have strategies of integration, right? Education, national service, housing, for example, that somewhat forces everybody to be together. And most of us males who have gone through the national service experience will say, well, all of us had to go through a similar experience, regardless of race, language, or religion. Then you have the bottom-up type of efforts, which is really the self-help groups. So self-help groups takes a bit more of a racial lines, right? So you've got SINDA, you've got CDAC, Mendaki. And the reason for that is because sometimes you need some degree of intimate conversations, and that really happens at the subgroup level. So if you try to overgeneralize to say, well, everything is the same, you're kind of totally race blind. Again, not very realistic, because sometimes you open up more to people who look and sound like you as compared to someone who doesn't. That's the reality of the way we are. So we've tried to blend the two, and in between we have what's called the harmony circles and the interreligious organizations to connect everyone together. So you've got verticals, and you've got this kind of rubber band that connects everyone together called the harmony circle, and that
nice
keeps the sticks together.
Right.
And we can't break those chopsticks now, because we are all one. So that must be the approach that we must keep in order to create a we first society. So it's a rather interesting concept, but there's so much behind the concept. And sometimes we've grown up with that, right? We've had tuition classes with CDAC or SINDA or wherever, and we've taken all of it as part of the journey. But it is all curated to allow us to understand the individual strengths, celebrate cultures and languages and religions on its own, but at the same time realizing that we're all one of a whole, and therefore we have to come together. And it's wired in our DNA. And hence my point that actually we've all been, with that Singapore first type of a perspective. But it's important for us to realize that it is really based on a we first mentality, that we are all fellow Singaporeans.
We're in it together.
We are in it together. And or we have to learn swimming.
But hearing you out, it also gave me this whole mental picture of how defenses, usually when we talk about national defenses, it's what's on the outside that you're protecting from the outside. But in this case, when you talk about the we first mentality and mindset, it's really about the defenses from within that we can build to fortify the country.
Yes, kind of transcending interests of an individual or one particular group. And sometimes when realizing that there must be compromises that are to be made, because it won't be one where all of us say, okay, I want A to Z, and then everybody A to Z, and somehow we can find that equilibrium across. But it requires a certain conversation to say, okay, let me see if I can consider not pushing for one or two items, but at the same time, we are stronger overall. And if everyone does that, then I think we'll be far stronger as a whole as compared to just looking at it from religious or racial or language stovepipes.
Well, we've been speaking a lot about we first. Let's funnel back to Dinesh first. If we gave you a wish and you had a break, what would you like to do?
Oh, break.
When you never heard the word before. Is it? No time to take
Actually, I
a
wanted
break.
to take a long break after my military career. I wanted to travel a bit, but never had
So what would be your ideal to just go,
The last time I did this, frankly, was pre-COVID with my family for quite a decent holiday in New Zealand.
okay.
So we went
Wellington?
for Wellington. The other Wellington. Yeah,
That's funny.
Yeah, that's true. We did drive to Wellington and from Auckland, and so to kind of travel with the family, try to spend a bit of time taking in the sights and sounds. The kids were pretty young back then, not pretty young, but slightly younger then. And so a lot of bonding time, a lot of, the experience of traveling. Although I was the driver, the designated driver. So I ended up having to do most of the driving. But it allowed me to bond with the family a lot more, allowed me to take in the sights and sounds, especially for a beautiful place like New Zealand. Yeah, so those are some... so if I get a chance for a break, probably a holiday to a picturesque...
With your family.
With the family.
South of France.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Just drive, eat, and
That's true.
breathe.
That's a very good...
No, I recommend it all the time to everyone who's stressed.
Actually, I went there on official duty, unfortunately, but yes, to Leong.
Leong,
So that was very beautiful.
Yeah. Go
Very,
further
very
south. It's amazing. I
Yes.
cannot recommend it enough.
I see.
It's really restoration of the soul.
I see. Wow. Okay.
Besides, got good wine. So now, if you, our viewer and listener, have feedback or suggestions on how we can do, that, especially on the issues that we've touched on with Dinesh, we invite you to connect with Reach at reach.gov.sg and follow them on Instagram at ReachSG. Now, if you don't know already, Reach is the government feedback and engagement unit that engages and connects with you on national and social issues that are close to your heart.
So before we let Dinesh go, just one final question.
Sure.
Don't worry, it's nothing to do with asking you to sing, but really finding out from you your thoughts on our quest to becoming a more gracious, caring society. I guess it's still tied in with the We First movement that we hope to get up and going.
Yeah.
Give us your thoughts, encouragement, words of advice for listeners and viewers getting on board this.
Yeah. So I think we have to realize that the Singaporean society is somewhat changing over the years. We have quite a couple of people who have been naturalized citizens in Singapore. And as much as they try to, integrate into Singaporean society to understand our norms, our cultures, etc., we should also do likewise. I'm sure most Singaporeans do this. They try their best. They're very good-hearted people. Also to just realize that, they may not exactly be the same as we are, but again, in that notion of a we first, we have to embrace everyone, and we must be glad that people are indeed coming to Singapore and wanting to make Singapore their homes. Of course, on the backs of the fact that families are not having enough children as well. And hence, the only way to balance up the equation would be to bring in people who are keen to set up their homes in Singapore and renounce their citizenship wherever they may be coming in from, and then to take up citizenship in Singapore. To be fair to them, it is a huge step that they take. I mean, imagine if you're relinquishing your citizenship from one country from which you may have been born, and to set up not just your generation, but subsequent generations in a separate place.
It's huge.
It's a huge perspective. And I think, to be fair, Singaporeans are very gracious to embrace people who are making that step and change as well. Sometimes, depending on the situation and depending on a more localized context, there could be some degree of, differences in view, differences in experience, and therefore, there's a view to say, well, you're not like me. But if you think about it, and if you go back to history, there's always a time where you can look at somebody else and say, you're not like me too.
Yeah.
And therefore, that has not stopped our founding generation of our leaders to say, and going back to Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, saying that every one of us are in this together. And he said some very interesting words. He said, we should not be mere spectators. We should not be mere spectators. And that was the title of one of the exhibitions that's going on right now. So there's a small little ad break to kind of recreate the history of Singapore from 1959 to where we are and how multicultural society is being formed. I think we've got a very interesting model. Many countries are studying our model, but that model will continue to change with the makeup of society changing as well. And we'd have to figure out what would that new chapter look like, and how can we ourselves in today's generation not be mere spectators ourselves too.
We're all migrants at the end of the day, our forefathers.
Precisely.
We were all not orang asli. Right, great. Thanks for wonderful chat with us.
Thank you.
You've been here with us on the Leong Form. Our guest is Minister of State Dinesh Vasu Dash, Minister of State for Culture, Community and Youth, and for Manpower. Now, if people want to follow you and find out what you're doing, how can they get in touch with you or check you out?
Not very difficult to find. You'll find me on most of the social media handles, from LinkedIn to Instagram to Facebook. Just do a search on my name, and it's good to click the public profile because my private page is already kind of maxed out. Some of it, but the rest you can know. But get in touch with me, drop me a text, and we'll be more than happy to chat.
So on Instagram, it will be at Dinesh Vasu Dash. Okay, so that's very easy.
Yes.
That's right. We hope that you've had a blast with us here on the Leong Form, with this episode brought to you by Reach. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow the Leong Form on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, as well as YouTube. And also don't forget to share this and all the other episodes with your circles so that they too can enjoy the conversations that you have been enjoying.
Okay, Stanley and Hossan signing out. Bye.
Bye.